The amphitheater had no walls, but the sound stopped at its edges. Every frequency Vithal carried, every overtone in the low chord that held his form together, folded inward at the boundary and stayed. His harmonics tightened. His bass frequency dropped a quarter tone without his permission. Somewhere below the stage, a human sat cross-legged with an instrument across her knees, and the first note she played did not bounce back. It passed straight through him. If you just arrived, you're right on time. What would silence feel like if you were made of sound? Stay with us. The colony's water filtration unit had been cycling unevenly when Vithal's delegation landed 3 days earlier. A soft rhythmic clanking that greeted them at the docking clamp like a broken metronome. He was Vithal. He was a chord. He had existed for 400 years as a sustained harmonic pattern, a shimmering distortion moving through space with a low chord that other Selvith could hear from 3-star systems away. The harmonic congregation had sent him here because human colonies were new, and new things required assessment. Standard cultural survey. Document, catalog, return. Nobody had warned him about the date. The colony smelled like tilled earth. Not sterile, not recycled, not the clean nothing of a Selvith resonance chamber. Dirt. Organic. Wet. Vithal drifted through the agricultural domes on the first morning and felt his chord waver every time the wind pushed through the transparent panels overhead. Wind had texture here. It carried particles of soil and pollen and moisture, and each particle interfered with his outer frequencies in ways that were not painful, exactly, but deeply foreign. Like someone pressing a palm flat against a vibrating string. His escort was a woman named Drell, colony administrator, who walked slightly ahead and talked constantly. She pointed at crop rows and explained irrigation schedules. She introduced him to colonists who smiled and nodded at the shimmering distortion in the air that was Vithal, then went back to weeding. None of them flinched. None of them stared. That bothered him more than the date. By the second day, he had catalogued 14 agricultural structures, 2 fabrication workshops, and a medical bay. All functional, all unremarkable. The colony was small, roughly 300 humans, and they lived the way humans apparently lived everywhere. Loudly, inefficiently, surrounded by things that grew. Then Drell mentioned the amphitheater. "We built it last season," she said, walking him past the eastern irrigation line. "Open A. Acoustic design. Marin plays there most evenings." Vithal did not ask who Marin was. He did not ask about the acoustic design. He followed Drell because that was the assignment, and because the alternative was another hour cataloging grain varieties, and because his low chord had been slightly unstable since landing and he could not determine why. The amphitheater sat in a natural depression between 2 agricultural domes. No roof, curved stone seating, a raised platform at the center. And the moment Vithal crossed the threshold, something changed. Sound behaved wrong. His chord, the sustained harmonic pattern that was his body, his identity, his 400-year continuous existence, settled. Not dampened, not muted, settled, the way a held note settles when the room's resonance matches it perfectly. Every overtone found a surface that received it without distortion. Every frequency landed where it needed to land. No echo. In a stone amphitheater open to the sky, with curved surfaces and hard materials, there was no echo. Acoustically impossible. Physically impossible. But what would a being made of sound call a room where every frequency found its place? What would it feel like to stop vibrating against resistance for the first time in 4 centuries? Vithal's form brightened. His low chord deepened. And on the stage below, the woman with the instrument across her knees looked up at the shimmering distortion in the air above the seating rows and smiled like she had been expecting him. Her name was Marin. She did not introduce herself. She tuned 2 strings on the instrument, a wooden thing with a long neck and a hollow body, and began. The first phrase was simple. 4 notes, ascending. Vithal's analytical processes identified the frequencies automatically. 220 Hz, 330, 440, 554. Well within the human vocal and instrumental range. His delegation's preliminary briefings had noted that humans produce sound between 85 and 1,100 Hz, a bandwidth the congregation's military theorist had flagged because it overlapped precisely with the frequencies used in Selvith harmonic warfare. The range that could destabilize a chord. The range that could, if weaponized, kill his kind. Marin was not weaponizing anything. She was playing a melody, and the melody was climbing, and each note found the room's impossible acoustics and arrived at Vithal's form without a single decibel of distortion. Pure signal. No interference. As if the space between her instrument and his body contained nothing that could degrade sound. He felt his overtones shift. The melody became more complex. Marin's fingers moved faster, pulling harmonics from the wooden body that led against Vithal's own chord in ways he had never experienced. Consonants. Not unison, not the rigid lockstep of Selvith communal resonance, but consonants. Two independent harmonic structures occupying the same space and reinforcing each other. His form brightened involuntarily. His edges sharpened. Colors he hadn't carried in decades surfaced across his distortion pattern. Then she began to sing. A low sound. Human vocal chords vibrating at 196 Hz, just below the threshold where Selvith War-Fi frequencies began. Vithal's bass frequency dropped to meet it and his entire chord destabilized. The low chord that had held his form together for 4 centuries, the signature other Selvith heard from 3 systems away. Loss of consonants. His form wavered, edges dissolving into static, the shimmering distortion that was his body flickering like a transmission breaking apart. Something thawed. Not ice. Something inside the sustained pattern that had been frozen since he first took this assignment. Some frequency he had locked down and refused to let resonate because resonating meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant a War-Fi frequency could unmake him. It thawed now, and what replaced the rigidity was worse than silence. It was the warmth of understanding what he was hearing. She was not attacking. She was harmonizing. Sounds rough, Marin said, pausing mid-phrase. She looked up at the wavering distortion above the seats. Don't worry. We trained on things worse than you. A half smile. We call them Tuesdays. Vithal could not laugh. He had no lungs, no mouth, no mechanism for laughter. But his chord pulsed twice, quick and involuntary, and Marin's smile widened as though she understood exactly what that meant. And now, in the amphitheater that should have echoed and didn't, with his form still flickering at the edges, the outcome phase 1 had frozen before revealing. Drell's voice from the top of the seating rows. Quiet, almost apologetic. We knew you were coming. Vithal. Not you specifically. Your species. The congregation's survey routes are published. We had 8 months. 8 months. They had built this amphitheater in 8 months. Curved the stone to eliminate echo. Calibrated the surfaces to receive Selvith frequencies without reflection or distortion. Built a room where being made of sound could exist without fighting the architecture for space. Compassion is our greatest weapon, Drell said. She was not smiling now. You should be terrified of what happens when it runs out. Vithal's chord resolved, not back to what it had been. The dissonance did not correct itself, it integrated. The new frequencies Marin's music had unlocked stayed, woven into his pattern, altering the chord he had carried for 400 years into something he did not recognize. Something wider. Something that contained a 196 Hz undertone that had no business existing in a Selvith harmonic structure. He had failed to maintain his chord. He had destabilized in front of a human, and the failure had rebuilt him. 40 hours later, aboard the delegation's transit vessel, Resonance Keeper Vithal filed his cultural survey report on Human Colony Outpost 9. Under acoustic infrastructure, where the form required a technical assessment, he wrote a single annotation. Amphitheater, Eastern Sector, no echo. Acoustically impossible given dimensions and materials. Purpose, not architectural. Purpose, welcome. The low chord he carried home was not the one he had arrived with. It was wider now, and somewhere in its lower registers, a frequency that sounded almost like singing. Tomorrow's story comes from deeper in the dark. A species that has never known silence is about to learn what humans do with it.